Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. If someone in your life has BPD, you know how difficult it can be, and you need to learn how to heal from those toxic relationships. And that's where this show comes in. Expert education, expert knowledge, expert insight, and delivered with compassion and empathy. To purchase and book sessions with ajmahari, visit ajmahari.ca. This is the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. And now your host, ajmahari.
What do people with BPD need most? The feelings of a person with borderline personality disorder communicate much more than the words he or she is using. People with BPD need validation and acknowledgement of the pain they're struggling with. But is that your job? I mean, obviously, if you care about somebody, you're going to care about how they're feeling, right? Wait, that doesn't work for people with BPD because they're too busy drowning in what they're feeling to be able to care about what you're feeling. And therefore, tremendous lack of empathy. Helping. Are you supposed to be helping somebody with borderline personality disorder in a relationship? So if you have a loved one who's been diagnosed with BPD, or you highly suspect they have the patterns of BPD, you can't force them into treatment. Oh, that's a for sure that people keep denying. Can you take steps to improve communication, set healthy boundaries, and stabilize your relationship? Can you really do that? Well, you can try. But I would say, without mutuality and reciprocity of that being received, heard, understood, respected by the borderline, how are you going to achieve your goals with trying to improve communication, set healthy boundaries, or stabilize your relationship? Well, the answer is you're not going to be able to. So people with BPD, as I'm sure most of you out there by now know, have major difficulties with relationships, especially with people that are closest to them in closer type relationships, like romantic relationships. And people with BPD have these wild mood swings, angry outbursts, chronic abandonment fears, and impulsive and irrational behaviors can leave loved ones feeling helpless, abused, traumatized, confused. You start to lose yourself, and it puts you way off balance. Partners and family members of people with BPD often describe the relationship as an emotional roller coaster, right? No end in sight, and boy, are you walking on the eggshells. And not one of us can walk on a borderline's eggshells without cracking several of them. You might feel like you're just at the mercy of your partner, or on and off again ex, or whatever the relationship type, the person with BPD. You're just at their mercy, right? I mean, it could feel that way. Or at the mercy of their symptoms, of their propensity to not be able to relate in any adult, congruent, consistent, emotionally mature, or mutual or reciprocal way. Remember all that? Can you relate to that? By the way, if you relate to this, I'm out here to work with you. If I resonate with you, many people need to realize they need to get out of the recycling, the relationships, the on-off limbo, the I'm going to get hoovered back, they're going to hoover me back, the idea and notion of other people online who don't even understand borderline personality disorder, trying to tell you to play all these games with yourself or the borderline and go no contact and do this and don't do that. So give the borderline time to miss you. Well, that's just ridiculous, because people with BPD don't miss people that way. You might really feel trapped in this relationship, on and off, or however it is. And you might think, well, the only way out is to leave the relationship, but you can't do that because it's too compelling and you got too much false hope and codependency and things going on there. Denial, for sure. So if they don't get treatment, you might feel like you need to leave. And by the way, it's not even rational, really, to stay in a relationship with somebody with BPD, or who just gets diagnosed with BPD, who's had no treatment, because it takes years. And you can't give them that ultimatum either, because it's not going to change or fix your relationship. I mean, a person with BPD that you're trying to have a relationship with, well, the eggshells, the emotional roller coaster. How could you? Can you change the relationship if you could just manage your own reactions better? So people out there, is what professionals and websites suggest, you could manage this relationship or the communication with this borderline, untreated or undiagnosed, both. If maybe you could just manage your own reactions better. I say a resounding absolute capital N-O to that, because that puts you, whatever you think of codependency, or if you relate to it or not, that would put you in an immediate codependent situationship of you now have more responsibility than the other person for what's happening between the two of you and from the other person. I don't think it's really realistic that you can manage staying with somebody with BPD untreated who's really hurting you, etc., just by managing your own reactions. That's like a way to drive yourself crazy if you believe that, actually. And then, maybe you could just establish some firm limits. Like, this is rocket science, and probably tried lots of boundaries, lots of conversations that end up being those jade conversations that don't go anywhere because the person with BPD can't hear you, well, in general, but can't hear you trying to set boundaries, because what do they know about boundaries? And all they know is if you have a boundary that denies them something they need and want right now, and they're seeking identity through you as they're mirroring you, well, the boundary is going to just give them fear of abandonment because they can no longer mirror you and seek identity through you if you have the unmitigated goal to be you and be separate from them or their perception of how they're relating to you. If people do get treatment, maybe things could change, but I don't really advise people to hang around relationships to see, because so many people with BPD won't go to treatment. Many others will go, stop, start, or not really be working with any mental health professionals skilled and who specialize in treating BPD and using the modalities that are best recommended for BPD. I've had so many clients that say, I'll ask the question, has he or she gotten any treatment? And many clients say no, and many clients say, she's been in therapy for 6 months, 2 months, a week, 4 years, 8 years. But guess what? And they'll say right after that, or soon after, well, but there hasn't really been any changes, and nothing's really working out any better. Because lots of people with BPD will go to just a therapist out there, no offense against any therapist, but people that don't specialize in BPD, people that don't know that much about it or how to treat it, and they will just end up being validated and assuaged and agreed with, and then they'll come back. And so they're not really getting anywhere in therapy for BPD, but they're in therapy and you think this really matters. Often it doesn't. And then they might learn the odd thing here and there, but it's not going to change the fact they got BPD. Then they're going to come back home after the sessions and they're going to weaponize it against you. So really, it's not a case of just most people with BPD in treatment, if they're not in those correct modalities of treatment for BPD, are going to all of a sudden be able to offer you, or even after years, a stable and rewarding relationship. So if you learn all that you can about BPD, the more importantly accurate information versus the all other types out there, which have some accuracy often, but also that fusing them, people with BPD with this, that, and the other thing, which is the case for some people. But learn all you can about actually BPD and not so many sources of information that are giving you either this unrealistic picture of how they can change and how fast or whatever, or the opposite for that matter, I guess one could say. So it's important, some people out there say, and professional websites, it's really important that you learn all you can. Okay, so you learn all you can about BPD, and how's that going to change anything? It doesn't. In fact, it should show you why you need to leave, and leave now. And if you've been ghosted and they slammed the door in your face, keep it slammed shut. Get into a healing recovery process of your own. Go no contact. It's that simple, but I know it's not that simple emotionally. They'll say out there, too, it's really important that you realize people with BPD are suffering. Well, yeah, they definitely are. But then they're going to pull you into their suffering. And or you're going to volunteer to be more at the heart of their suffering. And more to the point, the punching bag of their suffering. And then you might be suffering as to how you got in and why you got into a relationship with somebody with BPD unknowingly. Then you're suffering in the relationship, but you're supposed to put their suffering first, because I guess what some of these professional websites out there are saying is that you should just martyr yourself. Well, I'm not saying that, but wouldn't that be part of what's going on for people if they realize and recognize codependency? And so the destructive and hurtful behaviors of people with BPD are a reaction to deep emotional pain. So they're not about you. Okay. And I've said this in many other videos or podcasts. But even though it's not about you, you're the one in the hot seat. You're the one taking all the abuse. You're the punching bag. So how's that going to work for you? How's that been working for you? Have you lost yourself yet? Are you unfortunately in a really unhealthy emotional place of your own now? Is it harder to regulate your own emotions? Are you just about empty from giving? Well, they take, and nothing ever changes? So if a person with BPD says something hurtful towards you, you're supposed to understand that the behavior is motivated by the person with BPD's desire to stop their pain that they're experiencing. And to quote one website out there that's a professional website, right? They got these programs, they want to help. Yeah. It's quote, it's rarely deliberate, unquote. Well, we know that's not true of everybody with BPD, but let's just say that you're with somebody with BPD and they're really hurting you, and they're saying horrible, hurtful things to you and all of that and more. And let's just say they're not doing it deliberately. Does that make it better? Are you supposed to sit there and be the punching bag because you need to manage your reactions better, but everything they do is okay? To me, this is nonsense. And if you've been living that way, please know you have my compassion, but I'm out here to work with you if you'd like to change that. And no contact isn't always the first step, but it's the goal. It's one destination of arrival in recovery and in breaking away from people with BPD who are not going to be able to give you anything more than you've already experienced in being somewhat annihilated, abused, not seen, not heard, no mutuality, no reciprocity, not really loved, but you're somehow supposed to hang in there and understand. But they're hurting so much, like they might not mean to be so horrible to you, but they're still being horrible to you. And no, you shouldn't take it personally because it isn't about you. But does that mean you should stay for more? I don't think so. And then there's this notion that, if you could just understand enough what they're dealing with, then maybe you could handle their difficulties in more constructive ways. Like, what? How could you do that if they're not doing that? And I think most people listening to me, or a lot of, people out here or whatever, you probably know now. If you're new to this, you'll be finding out quickly, but what borderline personality disorder is and learning about that. And I would say don't over-focus on learning about that, because it's not going to save your relationship. It's not going to take you out of the world of hurt you're in. You need to understand more about yourself, and you need to learn why you need to not be in that relationship before you absolutely lose yourself, or if you've lost yourself and you can't emotionally relate anymore and you've been beaten down like crazy, and maybe literally physically and maybe emotionally without the physical, it's time to go. So does your loved one have borderline personality disorder? Well, do you feel like you need to tiptoe around them, the eggshell walking? Are you watching every little thing you say or do for fear of setting them off? Because when they get set off, you don't set them off. They have triggers already inside. And when they get set off by what's going on inside of them from the past and repetition, compulsion, unconscious cycles they're repeating, then you're going to take what? Responsibility that you, quote, set them off? You didn't set them off. And do you often hide what you think or feel in order to avoid bites and your feelings getting hurt? Because you know what? That can't go on forever. It doesn't help. They still go off. Does your loved one shift almost instantaneously between emotional extremes? So one minute they're calm, the next minute they're raging, or they're giving you the silent treatment, and you have no idea what's going on. Like, what just happened here? Nothing. And they can be suddenly despondent. These are the rapid mood swings, unpredictable. Are they seemingly irrational? Well, they're all big red flags of stop. You don't need to be there anymore because what you believe about this person, how you want to love this person, isn't who this person with BPD is. A third thing for you to assess for yourself: does your loved one with BPD or suspected BPD tend to view you as either all good or all bad? There's no middle ground there, and I don't think I have to give you an example, right? You probably know. And a fourth thing to consider here: do you feel like you can't win? And here's the beginning problem with that question. People in relationships who are loving or claiming to love each other or trying to love the other person shouldn't be thinking about winning at all. But do you feel like you can't win? That anything you say or do will be twisted and used against you? Does it feel as if your loved one's expectations constantly are changing, and so you're never sure how to keep the peace? More to the point, who says it's your responsibility to keep the flippin' peace? If it's a borderline that can't do peace, can't do consistency, isn't mutual, isn't reciprocal, it has all this pain inside, which is true, but they are drowning inside of a lack of self and they don't have time or room for you. How's that okay? It's not. Think about that. And a fifth thing, is everything always your fault? Do you feel constantly criticized and blamed for things that don't even make sense? Because I'm sure you do, right? Does the person with BPD accuse you of doing and saying things that you never did? Oh, isn't that crazy making? That is gaslighting. That is one of the worst forms of emotional abuse on the planet, even if they're not doing it with intent to hurt you. You have no lasting resource defense against this. Please hear that. You just don't, because none of us do. Do you feel misunderstood whenever you try to explain how you feel, what you need, what just happened, or if you're trying to reassure them? Are they reassuring you ever? And a sixth thing here, these are all big red flags of why you can't go on and why you should not, after ghosting or discard, be trying to be in the on-off limbo place of recycling these relationships to get more of the same. Do you feel manipulated by fear, guilt, or outrageous behavior? Well, if you answered yes to any of the other questions, then the answer to this one is definitely yes. Does your BPD loved one make threats? Oh, they make threats all the time. Do they fly into violent rages, make dramatic declarations, or do dangerous things when they think you're unhappy or you may leave? Or if you've just tried to tell them that something they just did hurt you, or many things that they've done you try many times in all these episodes of chaos and pain and agony and BPD threats and rages and silent treatments and dramatic declarations and probably a lot of ultimatums and maybe some dangerous things they do, and it can include physical abuse, and that's even more so. Women with BPD do it, but men with BPD do it at a whole different, higher level percentage. And in a way, no offense to men, if you're physically aggressed at by a woman, that's still just as wrong when a woman does that to a man as when a man does that to a woman. And the only difference, barring any weapons, in said kind of like horrific behavior and out of control behavior, then men tend to do a lot more damage to the women, men with BPD, do a lot more damage to the women that they aggress at than women aggressing toward men. But the fact that they aggress at you, whether it's a woman aggressing to a man or a man aggressing to a woman, that's the big red stop sign right there. And many people have already crossed that sign and let it go, and you're still wanting to be in this relationship. If you've answered yes to many or most of the 9 red flags of why and how it's impossible for you to help a person with BPD, then your partner or your family member with BPD, not safe to be around, really, and it's a red flag that you need to really take care of yourself and start focusing on yourself, because you can't change anything that they're doing. And here's a phrase that might sound trite, right? But this is something I'm really trying to communicate to people. You're trying to help, rescue, fix, and you are enabling a person with BPD. To help someone with BPD, you can't help someone with BPD. But let me just say this anyway. To imagine you can help someone with BPD in any meaningful way that's going to make your relationship better. You're going to get your needs met. First, you have to take care of yourself. I would say that first isn't really first. It's kind of like on your way out the door, as you're ending this relationship, which people have a lot of difficulty doing, you need to take care of yourself first. That usually should be a deal breaker and a relationship ender. A lot of things that are said out there, even by professionals and on professional websites that want to take in your BPD loved one to help them, the advice that they're giving to people like yourself, if you're the ex or on-off, or you're with somebody with BPD in any relationship type, the notion of starting off with helping someone with borderline personality disorder, no. That's all one way. That's too much to ask, especially if they're not in therapy, but even if they're in therapy. Therapy is what needs to help them. Professionals need to help them, and they need to help themselves and learn how to help themselves. It's not your job in any relationship type to help them. This notion that people should be helping these people with BPD, it's really a misguided one. And it's really one that just leads to people losing themselves. And it is about codependency, because it is about trying to get your needs met by first trying to help this person with BPD to not do this, not do that, understand this, fix this, change that. It's a no-go in relationships. It should be a big, big red flag. And so, what do people with BPD need the most? Everything you've got and tons and tons and tons more. And you don't have what they need. Because even when you give them what you have to give, it never satiates, it's never enough, it's never good enough, you can't give enough, and it rather sets up the dynamic, and I'm not trying to focus too much on codependency here, but the dynamic of why people with codependency stay in these relationships, or how this could make someone's codependency worse, because the notion that what do people with BPD need the most is if you're there to provide that to them in any relationship type. No, you're not. Because to do so is to negate anything and everything that you need, that you want, that you deserve. It's to negate your entire bloody self. That's how people lose themselves. That's why people feel like, you can't live with them, but you feel like you can't live without them. People with BPD really just need this, okay? Everything you got and then some, until you don't know who you are anymore. And even that won't make the relationship work. But people with BPD need validation and acknowledgement of the pain they're struggling with. Have you tried that lately? They don't really want validation. You can try to validate their pain. They'll still find a reason to be angry with you, and it'll start an episode. Or they'll give you the silent treatment, or they'll ghost and discard you. Because they don't want to hear the truth, because they can't be accountable, because they don't know who they are. I hope I'm painting a picture here that you can relate to that spells impossibility. This relationship is not going to work out. And I'm out here to work with people to help you heal and recover and actually learn to cope with even extricating yourself from the relationship, or trying to learn how to cope with emotions so that you can get out of the relationship, or stop going back for more. Stop wanting that ex back. So people with BPD, they just need the validation and the acknowledgement of their pain for all their struggling and suffering, which is true. They're struggling and they're suffering. And now you're going to struggle and suffer ever more than you ever have, to the detriment of yourself and losing yourself and maybe your physical health, not only your emotional health, because you're going to suffer immensely with a person who's already suffering super immensely, because they don't have anything to share but their pain and their needs and their wants, and they don't know the difference between half the time what they need or they want. And you weren't put on this earth to give them what they need or want, because it won't satiate them, and it won't be good enough, and it won't change them, and they won't turn around and love you for it. That's what people with BPD need the most. And that's what you, I hope, might be starting to realize or know right now, or come to know soon. You don't have what the borderline in your life needs most. You don't. And you need to get out of that relationship And you need to not be recycling relationships and going back and wanting your ex back, because nothing will have changed. And unlike that person out there, a couple of them, oh, just do the no contact thing and how's it working or isn't it working? No contact is something that, no, I don't say you should go no contact number one. When I work with clients, often people have to just work with someone like myself or me, if you resonate with me. And we have to do a lot of work with helping you to just cope with what is right now. Are you still in the relationship? Are you still going back and forth? Are you still wanting them back? Or are you more ready now to turn away? But in all of these scenarios, I work with clients. You're free to book sessions with me no matter where you are in this whole mess. Because it is a mess. Because it isn't about love. You might love them, but they don't know how to love you. And what do people with BPD need most? I would say they need most to be on their own until they go through a successful treatment so that they can actually relate to others separate from, that not seeing self from other from self, and until they can be mutual and reciprocal and reasonably emotionally balanced, right? And anything less than that, what are you doing there? Because you're losing yourself. Because all people with BPD need is validation and acknowledgement of their pain and struggling. And when you give it to them, they will punish you for that too. And I'm going to have a lot more coming extensively on BPD, punishment and revenge in BPD. And I have an ebook out there right now. It's at, if you go to ajmahari.ca and click on the menu at the top, courses and products, or products and courses. I don't know. There's no courses right now because I'm too busy with clients. But you could find the ebook there, or you could go to ajmahari.com. More people have been More people have been purchasing that ebook a lot over the last couple of years, and I don't even usually mention it in all of my yakking at you guys. So here's the thing. I don't even mention it to clients, but I'm going to have more ebooks coming, and I have some ones I did. These ones are older, but they still hold the test of time. But I will be doing a lot more and adding more to the ebook. That I don't mean making the ebook longer. I will add more resources around that ebook on punishment and revenge. And the correct title of my ebook, that is an older one now, an oldie but a goodie, right? It's called Punishment and Revenge in Borderline Personality Disorder, the Unregulated, Unmastered Talionic Impulse. So I'm going to have much more coming on this, but it's going to be, I don't know, either on Vimeo or it'll be available where my ebooks are currently available. So it will be not free in a podcast or on the YouTube channel. I'm going to go so deep into this that you might want to start by reading that ebook, purchasing that and getting that. And I have other ebooks out there too. And then you'll be ready to jump into the content that's coming soon on that topic. Why did I mention that right now at the end of this episode? Well, simply because all the borderline really needs from you, just a ton more than you could possibly ever give, unfortunately for everybody, right? But people with BPD just need that validation, and they need their suffering understood and all that good stuff. But that's what therapists are for. Not partners, not siblings, not friends, not the favorite person. This is not your job, anybody out there. You can't do it. And you'll lose yourself in trying to do it. And you'll be in a world of hurt. And people are already there. And if you want help, I'm out here to work with you. If you resonate with me. And so the other thing is, I mention it now because even if you try to validate their suffering, even if you try to understand and or talk to them about their pain, they're going to punish you for it because they're not ready to deal with it. A lot of what's going on for them, they can talk a bit about needing to be validated, or don't you hear what I'm saying, or I need you to understand me, and that's all one way too, isn't it? Like, there's nothing there for you. You're going to try to do all this for a borderline, and they're going to punish you for it anyway. Because unfortunately, in their world of all that BPD means and all the suffering and agony they are in, they don't want your validation. It will never be good enough. They don't want your understanding their suffering. They don't want your help. Because They will rail against all of it sooner or later because you're not the wounding mommy or daddy, and I mean the actual person. One thing I learned in my journeys of healing and recovery decades ago was when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I learned in therapy, I was treating everybody else like they were my parents, who were cluster Bs and alcoholics and messes and very abusive. And so I was relating to everybody as if they were parent, other, wounding parent, right? Parent, object, other, representation of said. And I didn't know that, but I learned it a long time ago and took note and was able to grow past that. But the other thing I know from the inside out, ladies and gentlemen, people with BPD do not want all that they seek from you, all that I just said that they need. Well, and you might not think that two things is all, but oh boy, it opens up a great big sinkhole of need. And people with BPD really do have that, and they really are suffering without a doubt. But they have to take personal responsibility for it. They have to go to trained mental health professionals to help them with it. It's not your job, and you can't do it. And if you've already lost yourself trying to do it, please don't go the next round of the relationship recycling. No good deed goes unpunished when you're trying to help a person with borderline personality disorder who might seemingly want that from you, but trust somebody from the inside out of having been there on that side of the fence. Anything that anybody tried to give me, care about me, give me compassion, give me empathy, kind of see some of my pain. I was hiding most of it, but anybody who tried to do that when I was, between the ages of whatever, any age in my life in childhood, up until about when I was 22, 23 and really gaining some ground in therapy, I would actually really punish people and or cut them off for trying to understand my pain. And I can say a lot more, and I will be saying a lot more about that in the program I'm developing about, just for your understanding. So it will incorporate, I will be writing more than the ebook that you can purchase right now. And there'll probably be audio and or video and like a new ebook along with that. So punishment and revenge in BPD is the unmastered, unregulated talionic impulse. And nothing that you try to give them is going to assuage or help in the ways that you mean it to, because they can't take it in that way. And as somebody who got labeled with BPD when I was 17, but had a BPD, NPD mother, stressed though mostly covert narcissist, alcoholic, and malignant narcissist, psychopathic, and many therapists I had suggested dark triad father, who was also an alcoholic. So I had that trauma to heal, and I did heal it, and I have overcome it, and I am an averagely mentally healthy person. I don't claim perfection by any means, of course not. But the thing that I'm trying to tell you is I'm telling you this from the inside out. I'm telling you in a way that most other people can't tell you. And I'm going to have much more coming on it. And like I said, the ebook's out there right now if you'd like to give it a read. The Unmastered, Unregulated Talionic Impulse is at the heart of borderline personality disorder, punishment and revenge. And they punish not only for abandonment, not only for many other things, they punish for love because they can't take in your love and they don't trust your love. And they don't see you, as I've said a million times, but I don't mean that to be, I'm fine to repeat myself. They don't see you for who you really are. And the whole time you're relating to them, in whatever relationship type, they are literally experiencing you as mom or dad when they are untreated. The wounding parent or parents, and you don't stand a chance to get seen for who you are. There is nothing there for you. There is not a person who can love you back. There is not a person who's going to thank you for validating, maybe short term, maybe here and there, but then there's going to be punishment and revenge. Because the punishment and revenge of the unmastered, unregulated talionic impulse in people with BPD, it goes deep. It goes to the really young, from infancy to early toddlerhood, emotional arrested development that is at the heart of the trauma response known as borderline personality disorder. And no matter what you think, I tend to think, and I know from the inside out, this is not a personality disorder at all. It's a trauma response. But that doesn't negate or change anything about how people with BPD, sadly, tragically, because they've been devoured, they will devour you if you keep giving them the opportunity to. So in trying to just meet what does the borderline need, you can't do it, and they'll punish you for it. I don't know what you're going to do with that information if you still think that you can be the knight in shining armor and you're going to get through to this one borderline that you're dealing with or on and off again or still in a relationship with, or you've been ghosted, monkey branch, discarded by. Why would you want more of the same back? That goes to childhood woundedness and things that you need to know better about yourself than you probably do right now. So again, I say all of that with compassion, and I have compassion for people with BPD as well. But there's nothing okay about people who are trying to love a person with BPD, sacrificing themselves into oblivion and losing self even more than you might not realize that you weren't a wholly integrated person in terms of something from childhood that hurt you somehow. But we're not talking about partners of people with BPD or favorite person or siblings being as hurt at all in childhood as people with BPD are. And let me just also throw in, I'm going to be doing more on this. Don't know if it'll be paid product or, some on the podcast as well. What people need to do and why they need to get away from people with BPD often, and especially in significant other relationships, but sometimes in family relationships as well. I went no contact from my whole family of origin when I was around 27, 26, somewhere in there, and approaching my own total and complete recovery. And by that, I don't mean I've never struggled with a thing in my life, but I do that like averagely mentally healthy people do. I don't do that like borderlines do. It's just really important to know that when I say what I say out here for you people to help you heal and invite you to work with me if I resonate with you, to that end, I have compassion for people with BPD and their struggles. They're very quite real struggles and brokenness. And I think that what most people with BPD just don't understand is the degree to which they're putting other people through unbelievable pain and living hell. They may or may not get that. Some might get it, many don't get it, because they can't stop focusing on that self they don't know. It's like they're focused on self, and they're self-obsessed, but there's no self there. And so they're drowning in their emotional dysregulation and their trauma, unresolved trauma, but you can't help them, and you can't rescue them, and you can't fix them or change them, and you are an individual that needs to find your own autonomy and needs to find your own self-worth and self-esteem by getting into a healing recovery process, so that whatever did wound you in childhood, that rather kind of taught you that you needed to first deal with somebody else's feelings, and then maybe they'd be nice to you, or maybe they'd love you or meet your needs. This is this externalizing out that loved ones do with people with BPD, because you're trying to get your needs met by meeting their needs, and you can't do that. And it is totally self-defeating to try. And you might be almost an empty vessel now yourself in terms of resources. Might be coming to a crisis point in your own life, because if you keep giving and you never receive, you're emptying yourself out, or you're abandoning yourself, and you're not getting your needs met at all. And everyone, to be healthy and balanced in life, needs to get their needs met. But as adults, we need to know that we are the ones who are responsible for ultimately meeting our own needs. As adults, we have to be able to do this stuff for ourselves first and foremostly. Doesn't mean we make islands out of ourselves at all. But it's about becoming independent, and yes, from codependent, for people that are in these relationships with people with BPD. And this is where it goes really deep, and I've talked a lot about it. But the point is, they will punish you. They punish all throughout the relationship. But they can really lay on the punishment if a relationship ends. And many people are afraid to leave. And there are people out there with BPD that are clingy and needy, and they're not going anywhere. They're not going to ghost you, and they're not going to discard you. And then there are people that will ghost and discard, and they're never coming back to Hoover. So you need to work on you today. You need to focus on you today. Please don't fall into the trap, and you might be in it already. You might be all the way down the rabbit hole at the bottom of this trap of it's all about the borderline, it's all about the cluster B. It's a lot about them, absolutely. But if you don't see what's happening for you, and why do you want what you want? Because they're not making you feel what you feel. They might well be hurting you. They might well be traumatizing you. But then the question for you with no blame, no shame, no judgment, and a lot of compassion is, what do you think is keeping you going back, wanting more? Are you trying to still hang in there in all these iterations? And what the borderline really needs is just, and fill in the blank. Because whatever they need that you try to give them, they're not ready to hear it. They don't understand. They don't want it. They want it. They don't want it. Because there's the black of it and the white of it. And no middle ground. And they will punish you for it.
You've been listening to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. Our passion is to bring expert information for people that are hurt by someone with BPD. We truly hope you've gotten something from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. For more or get sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. See you next time.